I noticed something. Centuries apart, sometimes thousands of years, different lands, different languages, different prophets. But when you look at how they worshipped, you stop. You think. Prostration, ritual washing, multiple prayer times each day, and turning towards something sacred. For one, it's the Kaaba. For another, it's fire. For one, it's Jerusalem. For another, it's the East. So is this a coincidence, or is there a common source none of us have been told about? Today we're throwing this question into the arena. You decide. Let's be clear about one thing. We're not here to rank religions or declare a winner. Nobody is on trial. This channel has one purpose: to see, to look at what's actually there. And let's start with a question almost nobody asks. Why don't we just pray in our hearts? Why do we involve the body? Is it a requirement, or is it a wisdom that was taught to us? Here's the answer. Humans aren't just spirit. The body has its own language. Modern psychology backs this up. Your posture directly shapes your mental state. Stand tall, you feel confidence. Bow, you feel respect. Fall face down, and something dissolves. A weight lifts. Prostration is a biological switch that tells the brain, surrender. The moment your forehead touches the ground, blood flow increases to the brain's decision-making center. Stress hormones drop. The mind resets. All the noise of the day goes quiet. All of this comes down to one thing: complete surrender. Now, let's go back 3,500 years. Year 1500 BC. Location: the Iranian Plateau. At this point in history, this is the heart of one of the world's most powerful civilizations. Vast deserts, snow-capped mountains, open plains. And from these lands, one man emerges: Zoroaster. Zoroaster sees the universe as a battlefield between good and evil. The god of light, Ahura Mazda. The force of darkness, Angra Mainyu. And humanity's role is to choose a side. You stand with the light, or you stand with the dark. The path runs through three principles: good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Now here's where it gets interesting. Zoroastrians prayed 5 times a day. They called these times Ga: dawn, noon, afternoon, evening, night. Sound familiar? That's not all. Before prayer, they washed their hands, face, and feet. They turned toward a specific direction, fire or light, a Qibla. But the most fascinating part, during prayer, they wore a sacred cord called the kusti. And, at every prayer, they would untie it and retie it. Not just a physical act, a deeply symbolic one. It meant, I am purifying myself from evil thoughts, evil words, evil deeds. I am binding myself back to goodness. In other words, intention, just like the intention made before prayer in Islam. You can read this in Zoroaster's sacred text, the Avesta, Yasna, chapter 44. Hymns addressed to Ahura Mazda at specific times of day, facing a specific direction with specific purification. Think about it. 2,100 years before Islam. No mosques yet. And already, 5 prayer times, ritual washing, intention, direction. How do you explain that? Now we move closer to something more familiar: Judaism, one of the foundations of monotheism. Walk into a synagogue today, and you'll notice something: people swaying back and forth as they pray. This is called shuckling, the body joining the prayer, the rhythm of the soul. But go deeper, and it gets more interesting. Jews pray 3 times daily: morning, afternoon, evening. Shacharit, Mincha, Ma'ariv. 3 times, fewer than Zoroastrianism's 5, but still daily, structured, obligatory. But what about prostration? Jews prostrated too. Yes, you heard that right. It's called Nifilat Apayim. The literal meaning, to fall on one's face. The Torah describes Moses falling face down before God. Numbers 16:22. Abraham does the same. Genesis 17:3. In modern Judaism, this practice has nearly disappeared. It only happens on special occasions, like Yom Kippur. Who removed it? When? And why? That's a deep question. For another video. But this much is clear. For centuries, it was there. And there's a group called the Karaite Jews. They follow only the Torah, not the Talmud. They still prostrate, just like Muslims. Forehead to the ground, full prostration. There's also ritual washing. Before prayer, washing the hands is obligatory. They call it Netilat Yadayim, Talmud, Berachot 15a. This isn't a hygiene rule. It's a purification ritual, a shift from the worldly to the sacred. It existed in Zoroastrianism. It exists in Islam. It existed in Judaism too. Now we come to Christianity. Most of us picture this. People sitting in wooden pews, hands clasped, heads bowed, praying quietly. No physical movement. A silent conversation with God. But the Bible says something different. Matthew 26:39. Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed. Fell with his face to the ground. Prostration. The Bible itself records Jesus prostrating. That night in the Garden of Gethsemane, just hours before the crucifixion. This wasn't an accident. This was a known, practiced, sacred act. So why don't we see it in modern churches? Who removed it and why? Historians point to Rome. As Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, it collided with Roman culture. In Rome, prayer was a form of conversation, persuasion, dialogue, negotiation. Physical submission was associated with slavery and humiliation. A free Roman citizen did not prostrate. That cultural pressure gradually pushed prostration out of mainstream Christianity. It tried to modernize worship, but it couldn't erase it completely. Walk into an Ethiopian Orthodox church today, and you'll see the congregation prostrating. They call it proskinesis. Syriac Christians also prostrate, and the word they use, pay attention, is Sajda. Same word, same movement, different language, same root. In monasteries, there's something called the Liturgy of the Hours, 7 prayer times per day, even more than Zoroastrianism's 5. But this belongs only to monks, people who have withdrawn from the world entirely. Christianity had this worship. It changed, diminished, disappeared in some places. But the traces are still there, for those who look. Let's pause here and listen to what modern science has to say. The fact that so many different cultures adopted the same physical movement isn't coincidence, and science supports that. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Religion and Health found that people who pray regularly showed significantly lower rates of anxiety and depression compared to the general population. Not just because of belief, the physical movement itself plays a role. In the prostration position, pressure on the neck and spine decreases. As the forehead touches the ground, blood flow increases to the brain's decision and analysis center. This produces a moment of mental clarity. Repeated 5 times a day, this movement lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. It slows the mind's constantly running engine. And here's the most fascinating part. In the moment of prostration, the ego quiets. The sense of I weakens. Neurologically, this mirrors the deep stages of meditation. It overlaps with the brainwave patterns measured in Buddhist monks during extended meditation. Thousands of years ago, none of these studies existed. No MRI machines, no cortisol tests. But this movement was commanded. It was taught, passed down through generations, and preserved. Science explains it today, but these movements existed long before science. Now stop. Zoroastrianism, 5 prayer times, ritual washing, turning toward the sacred. Intention ritual, 1500 BC. Judaism, prostration, hand-washing, daily prayer times, thousands BC. Christianity, prostration, 7 daily prayers, purification, 1st century AD. Islam, 5 prayer times, ritual washing, prostration, qibla, intention, 7th century AD. Different continents, different centuries. People who had no contact with each other. 2 possibilities. First, coincidence. Humans independently discovered the same things. Maybe through brain biology, maybe through cultural evolution. Similar needs producing similar solutions. Like the wheel, independently invented in different parts of the world at the same time. This is plausible, but it doesn't fully explain things, because coincidence can't produce this level of specificity. 5 prayer times, ritual washing, prostration, intention. Did all of these appear simultaneously in the same order by accident? Second possibility, a common source, the same message reflected through different eras. Each prophet brought a teaching adapted to their time and their people. Over centuries, these teachings changed, diminished, were forgotten in some places, but the essence was preserved. The Quran answers this directly. Surah Al-Hajj, verse 67, "For every community we have appointed a way of worship." The Bible opens a similar door. Hebrews 1:1. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets, at many times and in various ways. Both scriptures point toward the same idea. These acts of worship may have come from a single point. The same song, sung in different languages. Which is true? Can it even be proven? Here's what you saw today. Worship may be humanity's shared language. Zoroastrians turned toward fire, Jews toward Jerusalem, Christians toward the East, Muslims toward the Kaaba. But they all made the same movement. They bowed. Different directions, different names, different languages. But the same act, the same surrender, the same silence. Perhaps throughout history, all of these different people were searching for the same door, and each one got a little closer. Now I'm asking you, what does this similarity make you think? Coincidence, or the trace of a forgotten common source? Which part surprised you most? Write in the comments. I'll pin the most thought-provoking one. Arena Divina. Where ideas meet and questions compete.